Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sonic and the Black Knight playthrough. It's time to take on the Titanic plane. But first, let's have a little mess around with our equipment, because I think we can probably make use of something else to maybe give us a little bit extra something. Yeah, we'll go for that, make things a little bit cheaper on the whole. Not great. We'll have to wait a little bit longer until we get the really good items that give us extra points for identification, but oh well, we just get to go for the gold in this one. Now, I'm not too much of a fan of these guys. If you're wondering why I was going as slow as I was in taking that guy down, that was pretty much because of the nunchuck issues that I was talking about. I think it was last part. Because I had to redo this particular chapter mission so many times because I got hit, and then I got so far into the mission, and then the nunchuck came out, and I was just like, oh my good god. Because they only take a few slightly frantic waggles of the sword to kill, but obviously when you are having issues with the nunchuck, moving the Wiimote can just yank it out and just ugh. Once you've got some Soul Surge, that does absolute wonders, because then it's only 3 hits of them and they're dead, and that's quite nice.
This is an unfavorable position. Don't fall into its trap.
Now, I quite like that Titanic plane's as bright as it is, because obviously after Misty Lake being so misty is probably the accurate term. And Camelot Castle was quite grey as well, and the deep woods were also similarly dark. It's nice to have a bright blue sky and rather green grass. I'm also really fond of the fact that we are going up to Stonehenge, because Stonehenge is obviously a rather ancient but rather interesting monument in Britain. It's located in Wiltshire in England, which is in the south, sort of near Wales. It's about 8 miles north of Salisbury, if that helps you out. Nobody really knows what Stonehenge is there for, but it does have an Arthurian connection, because in the history of the Kings of Britain, Geoffrey of Monmouth attributed the construction of Stonehenge to Merlin. Basically, he went to Ireland, and by some sort of pulley system he managed to get it back on the boats and bring it back to England and set it up. And it was there as the tomb for, well, it was the burial place for Uther Pendragon and finally Constantine III. Now that story spread quite widely, and appears in kind of numerous forms in Wace's Roman de Bru, Lacheman's Bru, and the Welsh Bru I Brenhined. But it's likely that it was wrong. But it's time to face down Gawain, who is obviously Knuckles, and he's harder than Lancelot, but still a little bit of messing about and spamming the sword gets you through. Make sure to use the guard if you don't want to get hit, because that will save you so much hassle. But there we go, he's done and dusted. I quite like that this took place in Stonehenge. It's quite random, but oh well. Now, for anyone interested, by Gawain, he was easily Britain's favourite of the Knights of the Round Table. Largely because he was meant to be kind of charming. He was like the playboy, ladies' man type character, but still fiercely loyal, very courteous, and just generally awesome. And there are many, many, many Gawain romances. He doesn't actually have his own romance by Chrétien de Troyes, though he does appear quite reasonably in Lancelot the Knight of the Cart, and more specifically in Percival the Story of the Grail. But outside of that, not really. But there are many, many other romances. You have the wedding of Sir Gawain and Dame Ragnell. You have, I think it's Gawain and the Turk. It's quite a few. The most famous of the Gawain romances is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is kind of a deconstruction of the romances of the time. Because I think the Gawain poet, because he was an anonymous poet, wasn't particularly fond of romances, so he took the piss out of them at every opportunity. Which is rather funny. And the way Sir Gawain and the Green Knight works is that it takes you one direction and then twists it, so you think there's going to be a massive climactic battle against the Green Knight, and then it's really not the case. And it's just all sort of a little bit awkward, but it's hilarious, and surprisingly good read. So if you get the chance, I would certainly read it. And I've had to read it more than once, because I had to translate it as part of my Middle English paper at university, or at least translate a certain set of lines, which was difficult, because, you know, Middle English being the complex beast it is, it was a challenge. But either way, that just introduces to the perfect hit. I've been using it since the beginning because I am a master. Not to toot my own horn, but oh well. And now that we have done with Titanic Plain and Gawain, it's time to enter into the Crystal Cave, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Unfortunately, we're not going to be, well, I say unfortunately, it's probably more fortunately considering how the gameplay ends up being a little bit more awkward whenever you're dealing with the dragons. We're not going to be facing one in the Crystal Cave, but we are going to be facing a lot of these falling stalactites, which are really frustrating because you can't necessarily always tell when they're going to drop on you. Which is just like, really? Now you can go down the bottom route, that's absolutely fine. I always find it safer to, use the Soul Surge to get the hits in, but there is a technique that you can pull off to make those jumps more normally. Basically, you jump, you homing attack, and then just as you are over the platform, you press A and you'll do like a heel stomp. In other Sonic titles, Unleashed, for example, they had the heel stomp on a separate button, which was certainly a lot more successful in terms of gameplay, but when you've not got too many buttons to play with, it makes sense to shove it all on the A button. But yeah, we're just blitzing through this game. Because the next part is the final part of the first half of the game, when we're going to get our fake credits. They're real credits, but they shouldn't really be there if you ask me. Like, Black Knight is a really short game if you just want to play the story. And you can get through this thing in well under 3 hours. It's short. I'd say that's probably the main criticism that I would level at Black Knight. Because it moves at such a pace that it doesn't really find time to settle. Like, they were doing and had the potential to do really, really interesting things with this setting. And they start to do, well, they sort of do interesting things with it. But I think they just needed a little bit more of an extended narrative. And that would have just made everything feel a lot more satisfying. Because while I'm very appreciative of the story that's here, I think it's a very well done one. The fact that, like, your battles with the Knights of the Round Table are over so quickly, and it's the same with pretty much all the bosses in the game, you can finish them in a ridiculous amount of time. And it's even the same with all the levels, like, they're only ever at most 5 minutes long. Most of them sit between, well, sit less than 2 minutes in length, which is sad, because you just feel like you're going through things so quickly. And as I said, you don't really get time to savour the experience as much. Now, this is rather awful gameplay. You've got to aim the sword at the crystals, but obviously with my chaos with my nunchuck, it was just like, oh gosh, please don't mess up, and inevitably it messed up numerous times. But then you get ridiculous things like that where you've got to break the blooming stalagmites and... like, stop doing this to me, game! Now, I'm pretty sure that you will have to do at least 2 loops of this area to get everything that you want to. There might be a way of doing it all on one fell loop, but yeah. Either way, this is the last villager that we need to save. Well, I don't know whether we really need to call them villager. Townsperson. We'll go with that. That was our last townsperson. And we only have one more mission left, I think, in the Crystal Cave, before we are done here, really. So, I suppose I could do a little bit of stuff about the Lady of the Lake. Obviously, in this game they call her Ninu, which I don't really know whether I am a fan of that pronunciation. I'm pretty sure in the Merlin TV series that came out 2008, 2009, maybe? It had a few series, but I'm pretty sure that they called her Nimue, which I much prefer as a pronunciation. It sounds a little bit more magical. But she has... the Lady of the Lake has many different names. Ninu, Nimue, Vivian, Elaine, Niniane, Nivian, Nineve, Evienne, and so on. But I believe the Lancelot Grail cycle, which there's many different cycles, the main Grail cycle that most people care about is the Percival Grail cycle, because that's the main one. But there's a Lancelot Grail cycle, and essentially the Lady of the Lake, there called Vivian, learns her magic from Merlin, who then becomes enamoured of her. She refuses to give him her love until he has taught her all of his secrets, after which she uses her power to trap him, either in the trunk of a tree or beneath a stone, and all sorts. Then in the post-Vulgate cycle, the second Lady of the Lake is called Ninian, and it's nearly identical to the Lancelot Grail one, but it adds the bestowal of the magic sword Excalibur to Arthur. Basically, when Sir Thomas Malory did Le Morte d'Arthur, he used both Lady of the Lakes, but didn't name the first one. She's the benefactor who grants King Arthur Excalibur, but then the second one is Nimue or Nimue. And there's various others, but she's an odd figure. Sort of hero or aid, sort of villain. Nobody can quite place her. It's a very similar situation with Morgan Le Fay as a character. She's a difficult one to place as to whether she's friend or foe. But either way, we're a true knight! Hell yes!
So I have to defeat the Knights of the Round Table and collect the sacred swords?
Yes, the 3 sacred swords, combined with your Caliburn, should dispel the power of immortality that protects him.
Sounds like a walk in the park.
We'll see about that.
Hey, come on! Isn't it about time you gave me a little credit?
The remaining knight, Percival, is the Knight of the Grail. She's as strong as she is noble. One mistake could be your last.
Don't worry! I've got one of the great sacred swords.
Of course. It's about time you figured that out.
I'm gonna make this look easy. She won't know what hit her. I've gotten pretty used to you, too.
That is exactly what I told you not to do.
Fare thee well, brave knight, chosen one of Caliburn.
And so, it's time for us to head after Percival. Let's do this.